The next place we visit is Turner's Tavern in the old Lyceum building. You may or may not be familiar with the Lyceum movement in the United States in the early 19th century, but that was the beginning of continuing education. And this Lyceum building here was the center of the Lyceum movement here in Salem, one of the most important in Massachusetts. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, there were common figures here. Yes, Longfellow, Poe, they came here as well. Frederick Douglass spoke at this Lyceum after the death of Abraham Lincoln. There was also another man who came and gave a presentation here, one Alexander Graham Bell. And it was right here in this Lyceum building where he demonstrated the first two-way long-distance telephone call. Now, before that demonstration between here and Boston, he called his workshop in Boston where his assistant Watson picked up. Before then, telephony was a curiosity. It was a parlor trick. After that demonstration, it was obvious that the telephone would be important for business. And many of the businesses in Boston lobbied the state government and later the federal government to build a telephone network after seeing Graham Bell do what he did right here. That demonstration changed the world. And yes, the ghost of Alexander Graham Bell occasionally haunts the closed auditorium of the Lyceum, reliving his glory. This building is haunted by a far more malevolent ghost than Alexander Graham Bell. It's haunted by Bridget Bishop. Now, the land where the Lyceum is located used to be owned by Bridget Bishop. She and her second husband, Thomas Oliver. And Bridget Bishop was the first person hanged in the 1692 witch trials. Now, her tavern is a little bit closer to Washington Street. It's not really under the Lyceum building, mostly back here. You have a small grove of trees. It's been euphemistically called an orchard, but this has always been downtown Salem. The very first building in Salem is right across the street. Well, and you can vaguely smell the smell of apples when the ghost of Bridget Bishop is about to appear. Anyway, like I said, she's a malevolent ghost. Not quite as malevolent as Giles Corey, but bear with me. And tell her a little bit about this situation. And Bridget Bishop has had a makeover too. A feminist heroine, that which she is not. If we want a feminist heroine, we should really remember Rebecca Nurse, because she kind of was a proto-feminist. In a lot of ways, very much a Puritan lady. That's 400 years ago. So, Bridget Bishop was a degenerate. And she was the first person hanged because she'd been accused of witchcraft before, as well as other lewd behavior. I mean, what would you think about a middle-aged woman who went down and watched your teenage sons skinny dipping and just making lewd comments over that? Not the nicest human being on earth. She almost certainly poisoned her second husband, Thomas Oliver. And once again, there isn't anybody with a medical degree in 1680 when she was first accused, so they went with the simpler charge, witchcraft. And anyway, in 1680, it's not possible to convict someone because you had a dream and your neighbor kicked the shit out of you, so Bridget Bishop is acquitted in 1680. She's also responsible for a disproportionate number of petty larcenies and other thefts. She's a pretty seedy character. I'll remind you, theft was a capital offense in England. It wasn't in Massachusetts, and that's probably why she lived in Massachusetts. She's not a good Puritan woman, and she wouldn't be considered a good person by today's standards either. And that's important for understanding why they arrested Bridget Bishop. Not only were there rumors that she was a witch because of the previous charge, but simply she was a criminal. The witch trials had a really bad image problem when they were arresting perfectly good, ordinary citizens. They needed to demonstrate a certain level of efficacy by hanging a witch who'd gotten away with the crime. And they looked in the direction of Bridget Bishop. Well, in 1692, the rules had changed, and suddenly spectral evidence was perfectly admissible. Well, Bridget Bishop is accused and convicted on the spectral evidence of some teenage girls from Salem Village. Teenage girls she had never met. Now, she had been a bad neighbor for a long time, and her neighbors kind of got in on it too. She is not convicted on their evidence. Just the evidence, just the spectral evidence on people she'd never met. Should hope that sounds a little bit scary. But Bridget's testimony probably didn't win hearts or minds. Now, Judge Corwin, just like Judge Hathorne, was a great humanitarian. He asked Bridget Bishop, "Art thou a witch?" And Bridget Bishop responds, "I am not a witch, I am innocent of the charge." To which Corwin responds, "If thou..." Now she says, "I am not a witch, I am innocent of the charge, I know not what a witch is." "If thou knowest not what a witch is, how knowest thou that thou art a witch?" Harvard education is good in these days too. Anywho, her response probably didn't win hearts and minds. She responded to Corwin by saying, "If I were a witch, you would certainly be the first to know it." Words to those effects. Anyway, the judge definitely did not advise the jury to come back with a guilty verdict. They do so really dang quickly, and they send her to the prison. She's the only one, as I mentioned, she's the only one hanged alone. She's put on a two-wheeled cart, she's bound, and seated on a box so everybody can see her. She's driven down Prison Lane, which is now St. Peter's, and then down Essex. Now, according to Cotton Mather, as she's passing Washington Street, she looks back towards the City Hall, which is in the middle of Washington Street at the time. And a clapboard falls off the board and goes flitting through the air and falls in her orchard. So she's taken to Proctor's Hill and executed. Now, I'm going to return to the current building a little bit for a second. Now, you'll see this nice, lovely brick facade, and there are some rumors that this building burned in the Great Fire of Salem. They didn't get this far. The fire didn't get this far. According to the Massachusetts Historical Commission, this is the original Lyceum building. It just got a brick facade in 1897. But anyway, that doesn't stop from Bridget Bishop haunting this place. Nobody's business. They do not put the chairs on the table at night because they won't stay up. There is no glass in any of the pictures on the walls because they have all fallen too many times. The silverware goes flitting around of its own accord. And the smell of apples and the occasional thump in the night. But Bridget really enjoys picking on the brand new waitresses. There's a great story from about a year ago. There's this brand new waitress and she was on, she was closing up with her manager. Manager tells her, go check upstairs and see if everything's all right. And well, the waitress goes upstairs and she sees what looks like a woman crouching behind some boxes. Well, yeah, that's a very real possibility in Salem. Vagrants or drug addicts, they exist. Anyway, the waitress goes running down the stairs. Hey, call the cops, somebody's there. Anyway, the manager doesn't look up. She just keeps on counting. And the waitress is like, there's somebody up there, we need to call the cops. And it's like, the manager says, let me finish counting this and we'll go. There's really somebody up there anyway. And anyway, the manager locks the drawer, takes the flashlight. Okay, I'll go up with you. If I see anything, we're calling the cops. Anyway, they go up, look behind those boxes. There's nothing. They look in every single corner. Nothing. And the waitress is like, yeah, there was really somebody up here. And the manager's like, this is fine. I think you just met Bridget. There's another waitress who had gotten a perm, dyed her hair pink. You know, something nice and festive for the Halloween season. Every time she went up and down those freaking stairs, she always felt like somebody was pulling her hair. The excuse she gave was that Bridget just didn't like the perm.